girl is back on the pro, Raja Kumari, repping India, coming to us from India right now. Raja Kumari, who has been on a mission since, almost since birth, being a first-generation woman who loves hip-hop. Parents were born and raised in India, moved here. She was raised in a traditional Indian household, fell in love with rap, is an amazing songwriter, has success as a songwriter, signed to a major label, and is really bringing hip-hop and the culture of hip-hop, not only from her American lens, but from her Indian lens, where she spends a lot of time in India. Raja Kumari, what's going on, Kiko?
What's up? Hi, bro. Nice to see you again.
We have been talking about and having you on, and you put out music and playing music for what, how long, 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah, you discovered me 2016. You put me on the playlist. You're the first person in America to ever play my music. So
wow.
I will always be very, very thankful to you for that.
Well, listen,
but it's been a minute.
You make fire, kid. Like, you know me, I don't care where it comes from.
I know. That's the great thing about you. You've supported a lot of Indian artists. So, we really appreciate you here in India.
Well, the scene there is one that is so, I think, important to the conversation of hip hop. Like, when you really break down Indian culture, it's so hip hop. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so hip hop.
It's all about the bling, the culture, the colors,
fabrics,
the vibes.
You know what I'm saying?
Fabrics, everything.
I want to get in. You have a playlist. Everyone, go listen. Because on this playlist, not only do you get Raja Kumari's music, you get a lot of her collabs, but I want you to put us on to some things that we don't know about that are fire.
So I wanted to put on some of the younger artists as well as the diaspora artists that I feel have really impacted and are carrying the culture around the world,
That's right.
So obviously, some of my favorites are obviously with Shah Rule. Shah Rule is a collaborator that I have worked with, on my last projects. We have a song called Kaun Hai Tu, but I put a song on here called Naye Wo. Naye Wo means I'm not like them, which I just like the vibe.
MC Altav and Raftar with Shah Rule. We're going to follow up with your joint, which starts the playlist Made in India. I have the honor today of Raja Kumari joining our program. Her message is manifestation, from vision board to Times Square billboards. Talk about that.
I take every opportunity to talk about manifestation. I think we talk about it, it's a buzzword, but I really believe if you look at my life, I am an example of it, that it is real. I made a vision board 10 plus years now. It's been about 11 years ago I made this vision board. And I put my ideas of the life that I wanted, I have Elvis Presley's platinum wall. You can't limit me. We don't know what will happen by the end of my life. I can have a lot of plaques on my wall. I have a few already. We can get more. And I had a picture of Rihanna and L.A. Reid. They were holding a plaque. And I was like, oh, I like this moment. But little would I know that in 2015, L.A. Reid himself would sign me to my first recording contract.
Wow.
So that was insane. That was took 5 years later. And there was actually the funniest thing that I did. There was a picture of Times Square and there was a billboard of Diddy. And this is when Diddy was
Diddy runs
Diddy's
the
always
city
been.
when he's running the marathon.
Diddy runs the
and all
city.
That. Yeah.
Exactly. It was during that time. It was
Right.
the hype Diddy moment. And I photoshopped myself over him in a sari. Because I was I wonder what kind of impact it would be to see an Indian woman in a sari on a billboard in Times Square. And that is literally what happened last year. Exactly this time. I have goosebumps just talking about it. Exactly this time. But the picture that I put up of myself and what actually went on the billboard in Times Square are almost identical.
Wow.
A lot of times I'm just I have to take a moment and look at everything that I've accomplished and realize that life is magic. Be who you are, be authentic, have the audacity to dream and manifest anything. That's the vision.
Over the last several years, with hip hop exploding in India, I had the pleasure of sitting down with, I'm assuming he's the biggest artist still in India, a young man by the name of Divine.
I knew you were going to talk about Divine, yes.
Well, because he, I think, has really transcended hip hop. Now, just like here in America, I've talked to some of my friends who are Southeast Asian, and they talk about how hip hop is it's in Bollywood, and they'll have people in Bollywood rapping, And I always reassure them, like, because they're like, yo,
Yes.
they're trying to make it corny, and I'm always like, yo, the same thing happens in America, B. Like,
Same thing.
don't, just because mainstream and media comes in and takes something that they see the youth are passionate about and takes it and makes a kind of commoditized, inauthentic version of it, don't be discouraged by that. You know what I mean? Be
Yes.
encouraged, right? Think about how many artists that you were exposed to as a young kid that were the inauthentic cheeseball pop version of something that was your that was your entrance point to actually
Yes.
discovering the real.
I think that is actually, we're watching it in real time. Like if you study hip hop, then you know the history of hip hop. You know how it came out of, what kind of, socioeconomic situations, what was
Right.
happening politically, what was happening in the music scene. There was so many things that contributed, to hip hop having its rise. And I always tell people that hip hop, it was like a tree, and there was a seed that was sent across, the oceans, and it planted in India. And the same way that it grew in America, it's growing in India here, but the branches are different. The soil is different. So all these different languages, all these different expressions, and we're so early in our journey of hip hop. I'm so thankful that the kids here still did ciphers.
That's right.
They didn't skip that. They didn't
right.
skip learning about graffiti. They didn't skip turntablism. They didn't skip the breakdancing. They got the elements of hip hop. And it's like, it's really rooted. It's rooted because 60% of the population of India is under 35 years old.
Talk to him.
So hip hop is the language of the future. And, in India, you're going to see more and more quality. I mean, you brought up Divine. I think Divine is one of the best examples of that. We know his story that, and I know him personally. So I know a lot of the details that, he really did not have shoes when he was growing up. He really has these lines about, being like shoeless. And now I saw him on the Grammy carpet wearing Louis Vuitton shoes. Like, we must pay attention to that. We must see the growth that's possible through hip hop. These kids that are born, with these dreams, like, I want to see hip hop take someone, all the way like how Divine did.
That's right.
It's incredible to see that.
How much, I sat with Divine out here. He was on the cover of Billboard right before Gully Boy.
Rolling Stone.
Rolling Stone, yeah. And so how did that movie impact what's going on? I mean, what are we, 3 years removed now since Gully Boy dropped? Maybe 4?
I think the rise of hip hop, could not be halted other than like what the pandemic did. The pandemic stopped season 2 of Hustle. It stopped a lot of like production things, but now we're coming back on our feet. The festivals are back again. And you're seeing through the pandemic, what actually happened was all these different pockets came up, like the Delhi scene, the Northeast scene, and they have different sounds. So it's like kind of what we saw with the diversification in America, where West Coast was so different than East Coast. And, we're getting that in India now.
Nice.
And it's super exciting, and
Nice.
there's more females. There's definitely more females now.
And culturally, speak on that too, because in Black culture, right, women gonna say what they want to say when it's time to say it. That's just Black culture in America. Like, there's a woman running the house. It's a woman on the block that'll box with the
Yes.
dudes. But that's a cultural thing, even before hip hop. Black women have always led the movement, the fight. In Indian culture, are there similarities there?
India has always, when people talk about, what do you deal with? What are the different, problems you deal with around the world? I always say racism in America, and I say patriarchy in India.
Got it.
And even though women are the strong that run, they are the strong ones that run the household, they run everything. In business situations, there's still the disparity in pay. There's even disparity with me and other artists that come on, man.
And that's still in America, by the way, in America
That's
too.
everywhere. I think that more women have to talk about that. But what's happening in India and around the world, I would say, is that also an Indian woman that is very soft spoken and fits the characteristics of the Kama Sutra and all the exoticism that the West would like to see us like. I feel that that's easier to digest. Whereas I'm a warrior goddess that will cut your head off like I'm Kali. So it's a little bit harder to face that because it's the truth. I know I'm breaking down barriers, but there were women before me that broke down barriers, like MIA, flipping off the camera for NFL, showing up super pregnant, unmarried at the Grammys, breaking all the barriers.
Right.
Every time I get an opportunity, I did this thing called the Ronnie Cipher, which I hope you will check out. And I put together, three other MCs, female MCs from India, the North and from like the South and Mumbai and me. And it's like in every situation because I'm outspoken, because I will, I'm the HBIC and I'll come in there guns blazing because I'm American.
Right.
Right? So you can't really tell me. Like it comes down to a point where I'll just be like, quiet, let me tell you the solution. And
right.
the accent gets me, really far. But when I break down that door, I always reach back and make sure I bring someone with me, especially a female, because imagine like at the table, they're talking about a seat at the table, man. We need our own table. There's no seats. There's one seat. They want me to fight everyone 15 years younger than me. And I turn around and just say, hey, do you guys want to do a song?
Right.
Like the person they want me to fight with, I'm like, would you like me to work on the production of your album? Like, and I think that like, everyone wants to put these limitations on age and, how many years or whatever you're doing. But I'm like, music is eternal. Music is universal. And the things that I do for music, a lot of the times are behind the scenes. Like I've been behind the scenes on a lot of the movements in India, influencing production and styling and all kinds of stuff. So I'll continue to do that because if Indian culture breaks like Latin culture, that's the world that I really want to see. That's the world I set out to go see. And we have a record. I put it on my playlist. Speaking of my playlist, I have J Balvin and Badshah doing the song Voodoo, which is the first of this like huge Latino Indian like link up. And I'm just like super proud of it.
I'm sure there's a piece of you that's like, you feel the burden, you feel the weight of what you're attempting to accomplish and the doors you're opening and the bridges you're building. But talk about happiness. Talk about fulfillment. You are inserting yourself in a way of leadership as well as mentorship for hip hop and those interested in expressing themselves through hip hop in India. But I would love to hear you talk just about the human side of everything that you're coping with or, celebrating.
That's such a deep question. And I feel like you can ask me that because you've actually witnessed my entire career. You've been there from the beginning. You've seen me go through it. And you've seen me go through many labels. I was signed to Epic. Then I was at Sony India. Then I left Sony. I signed to Mass Appeal, Universal. Then I got uploaded to Capitol. And then I left everything.
Right.
And I think that journey for me was always seeking validation. Whether it was when I was in America, people would tell me like Indian, like label heads would tell me Indian girls don't rap. They would tell me India doesn't matter. And I find it really funny that now every major recording label in America needs to have a plan for streaming for India for them to survive. And imagine 5-6 years ago, they were sitting on this, so it was like, okay, cool. So it's like I had to leave America to go do what I knew was right, and that left me with a lot of pain, I think, just like having to leave where I came from. But it pushed me to go to India. And I think this time in India, being away from my family, talk about lonely.
Right.
This whole time I've been alone in Bombay. I had to make a brand new life, and I was lucky to meet really good people and, be in the scene, and the scene really welcomed me. But I pushed and pushed and pushed, and I never stopped. And it wasn't until the pandemic that I was forced to stop, that I realized that I was burning myself at both ends. I was willing to sacrifice my human form for the divine form of music, And I think like I started therapy, which is such a taboo idea in India. People in America, we talk about therapy and everyone has their therapist and it's like easy. But in India, if you do
this
therapy,
this is another way India is like black folks.
Exactly. Like if you say you're going to therapy, they're like, what's wrong with you? Like just take a nap or like,
right.
Eat some better food. And you're like, dude, I have like deep-seated childhood trauma that is like coming out in my music and the way that I deal with people. So I feel like before this album came out, that was such a journey to like really find self-love. And I think I did it out loud with my community. And I think now that I'm independent, that I've made Godmother Records, and because I want to keep God first and be a mother to the, Kumari kids and the artists that come behind me, provide artist development the way that maybe wasn't provided for me and, try to nourish Indian music. I just feel like this is crazy to say, but to be signed to Nas, who is one of the top rappers of all time that are alive, bro. You can't talk about it. And also, it's not talked about enough. I'm the only female he's ever signed. So to get the co-sign of Nas and it still not be enough to walk me through the doors and have America, accept me or whatever the acceptance, the validation I sought after when I left, it made me realize that it can't come from the outside. Because the greatest rapper of all time gave you a cosign, but it still didn't give you what you wanted. And that made me go within. It made me make the music and put no one between me and the people, So now I wrote a song on, we talked about Shah Rule. There's a record with Shah Rule on the EP, The Dawn. We finished it a day before I turned in the album, and I just said it's the last track. And there was no one to say anything back to me. And it was like, I felt so liberated,
Right.
to be able to tell someone like Nas, like, thank you so much for believing in me, but I don't think that this is the right path for me. And then walking a path, you don't know how scared I was to do that. But that strength it took has brought me here today, and I just feel like this new era is gonna be happy.
Well, I want to get back into HBIC, which just dropped May 13th. What should we play off of it? What do you want to play next?
I want you to play Manifest, because I just talked about this whole story. And for people that are waiting for me to spit bars where they're like, where's Raja? She's not rapping, she's singing again. This record I wrote with Elvis Brown, who is early collaborator on Mute. And I felt like he knows me the best, So we were able to write this song, and this is my life story. And there's no choruses, just bars.
The name Raja Kumari it's your name as an artist, but it's also a bit of a title, correct? Mm-hmm. What does it mean?
Well, Rajkumari means princess, so daughter of the king. But like all rappers are about wordplay. And for me, I was like, okay, daughter of the king of kings. Like, I am God's daughter, and I'm here on earth to bring a certain message. And the other funny thing was, in this patriarchal world, like we described, Raja itself means king. So Raja Kumari means daughter of the king. So to make my first name King, it was like every single man is gonna call me king, and they're gonna like it,
Is there ever a pushback? Like, are there people who kind of side-eye you because of your name in the world in India, or?
Maybe at the beginning a little bit, until they saw me on stage with a microphone and they were like, never mind, go forth,
Right. Listen, Raja Kumari, it's always a great time to sit and talk to you. Everybody go get the project. HBIC, it's on Godmother Records. Congratulations again. Thanks for joining us today on The Message. Let's close out Bendies and Bangles. You know what I'm saying?
Let's go. This record I wrote for my females all over the world. And it's also for the diaspora. We rocking saris and Ferraris.
You know what I mean?
Don't forget it.
You know what I mean?
We rocking them saris and Ferraris.